Good evening, everyone, and thank you for making time for the discussion. So, we have started our journey Vedantic philosophy. We have done 3 sessions. These 3 sessions, I did not need to describe what is Vedanta or what is the philosophy intending to do or how deep it wants to go. So, the first 3 sessions went into discussing how do I prepare my mind to be able to grasp what is being offered. If I want to study Vedanta, I have to prepare my mind to studying Vedantic philosophy. And that's what we discussed, that what are the qualities that are required, or how should I approach my mental makeup before I start inquiring about Vedantic philosophy, or before I start getting deep into Vedantic philosophy. Just give me 1 second. Preparing the mind, there is a specific term called the 4 disciplines that you need to develop as a seeker, as a person who is inquiring, as a student of Vedantic philosophy. These are the things that are prerequisite for a good, serious inquiry into the subject. So, first, you need discrimination. You need to apply discriminative knowledge or discriminative power of your mind so that you can distinguish between what is right, what is wrong. That's very basic. But more than that, discrimination while studying Vedanta is required so that the knowledge that you are acquiring should not be misused or mistreated. For example, throughout the Vedantic philosophy, we will be coming across this idea that what we are not, and how this whole world that we are experiencing is an illusion. Now, a positive way to look at illusion is understanding what can be right or what is real. A negative way to look at illusion is that no matter what I am experiencing or no matter what I do is unreal, and hence, why should I make the moral effort to be right? So, this is where discriminative power while studying a philosophy comes into play, that you understand what is being offered to you as knowledge, and you do not misconstruct the knowledge that you are acquiring, because in our minds we are still acquiring knowledge intellectually and not experientially. So intellectual knowledge can be manipulated, experiential knowledge cannot be manipulated. So till I experience the greater truths that are being offered in Vedanta philosophy, I need to be careful. I need to be careful of my own mind. So that's discrimination. So first thing that we needed Vedantic philosophy was discrimination. Second, we discussed Vairagya. So Vairagya was the second quality that we need to develop as a true seeker. Now, why do you need Vairag as a seeker? Vairagya or renunciation has many benefits in daily life. If I narrow down my prism to why is it required as a prelude or a pre-requirement to the study, if I continuously keep checking my effort, like whether my effort is good, whether my effort is in right direction, whether I'm asking correct questions or not. If I'm too attached to my effort, then I am, in essence, it will mean that I am too attached to the result or the outcome, and I am fixated at a particular kind of outcome, and hence the study will be colored. If I want to study Vedantic philosophy without any prejudice, then I should be detached with the effort that I am trying to put. I will put in the 100% that I can, but I will not keep checking and rechecking what I am offering, what I am putting in and what I am getting out. And hence you need a little bit of dispassion, little bit of distance between the results that you want from your effort and the kind of effort you are putting in. So that's why in practice is required while you are studying Vedantic philosophy. Then you had Sat Sampatti, where you had 6 more qualities that you had to develop if you are trying to study Vedantic philosophy. That is your Sam, Dam, Uprati, Titi. You need a mastery over your mind. You need mastery over your senses. You need withdrawals from compulsive activity, some kind of titiksha, that is opposing. You will be steady in mind, irrespective of whether you experience comfort or discomfort, praise or blame. So, in the face of opposites, you will be steady in the mind. Then you have Shraddha, where you have deep respect and faith in the teaching that you are reading. Faith born out of experience, not out of blind faith. Not born out of blind faith, but Shraddha born of real faith, which is not blind, but faith is unshakable. We discussed three kinds of experience. When you start truths, you need to first intellectually understand it, then experience it or test it in the real world. Third, intuitively or at a level of meditation, you need to understand the truth that is being offered. When you are truly exercising, you will receive knowledge, try to understand it intellectually, experience it in the real world, and contemplate it during meditation so that you have understanding. When all three are applied to the knowledge you are acquiring, then the faith that is born is unshakable. So, Shraddha, which is born out of deep study, not blind faith. And then you have to develop one pointedness in the mind. So, these are six qualities. Vairagya, then the six qualities are clubbed together because these are qualities of the mind. Then comes where you are desiring liberation. A burning desire for liberation leads to genuine study. This is something that keep in mind, that intense longing for liberation. If you have that, then and only then you go deep enough into studying Vedanta. And this is what we discussed for last 3 days. Up till now, we did not discuss the essence of Vedantic philosophy. That is what we are going to discuss today. And how the next 8 sessions will pan out, I will try to give you a gist of that so that you understand where these discussions are placed in the larger scheme of things. Any questions or comments, please do. Are we all on the same page that we have started our study of philosophy? For the first 3 sessions, we have tried to understand what qualities are required to become a serious seeker. So, this has been our last 3 sessions. Even if you did not attend the last 3 sessions, I hope I have been able to reintroduce the idea that even if you do not remember what I just said for last 15 minutes, the qualities that are required to develop, to pursue, or the mental traits that we should have if we want to pursue Vedantic philosophy seriously, what is the net takeaway for last 15 minutes is that there are two kinds of seekers. One who are genuinely interested, and two who are interested at a surface level. If you are a genuine seeker, then you will have to acquire mental traits, help you inquire properly. To inquire deeply, we need to create a mental environment that helps me to go deep into a particular subject. Inquiry comes only with deep interest. How do you signify, or what signifies deepest layer of interest is if someone is desirous of liberation. So if somebody is desirous of liberation, that's the highest form of interest for this kind of study. There are seekers truly interested. And if I want to become someone who is a seeker, who wants to acquire knowledge, then a little bit of seriousness is required. And that seriousness comes with some mental traits. These are the traits that I have explained. Even if you do not remember these traits, remember this idea, you need to develop the requisite amount of resilience and interest in a particular subject to become a good seeker. Because by default, we don't become a good seeker. Seeker is a stage prior to practitioner. So this is something that we need to understand and probably accept and learn, that inquiry is important, and to inquire, right kind of mental framework, mental setup is required. That is what Sadhana Chautasya tries to highlight. Again, why am I spending so much time with this idea that we need to become a good seeker? When we went to Kumbh Mela, this was last January, was supposed to be this event that can transform us. For Kumbh Mela to have a transformative impact on us, we should have engaged with practices a little more deeply, spend more time. Then the transformation would happen. Some of us just went to experience the event, to expect change, which is transformative in nature, is not right. You experience something for 1, 2, 3 days like we did, it can have an impact on our mind, which we will remember as an experience, and it could be a starting point for us to develop spiritually. But that will not bring about permanent change, requires more effort. Those spending 30, 40, 50 days and experiencing Kumbh Mela the way they should have, and they were doing the practices that the Guru taught them, they were transforming themselves through the experience. We experienced Kumbh Mela as a cultural event, a little bit of spiritual event, and an exercise of faith. So the kind of seekers we were during Kumbh Mela was quite different from someone there for 45 days. Spiritual inquiry is very serious as a topic. One is to satisfy ourselves intellectually. That is the starting point of our transformation. We need to go beyond that. And hence, the quality of our seeking becomes important. I hope I could share my thoughts clearly. Any comments or suggestions, please share.
I haven't been able to attend the last three classes. It's a huge miss.
I'll share the recordings. No problem.
That'll be wonderful because I would
Yes,
definitely want to
I'll share
attend
the
right
recordings.
from the
That's
onset. If situation doesn't permit, I may have to miss also. Okay, so
no,
recording
no.
would help. That's a different thing. But
I
what
have
I was
shared.
trying to say is,
Yeah,
you're talking about being a seeker with the true mindset, right? Seeking with the right disposition or the right attitude or the right focus is essential. Isn't that true for anything in life?
it is true. Absolutely. Any like modern day teaching or the setup is such that we judge the teacher a lot. You go to a school and now the quality of the school is judged, the quality of the teacher is judged, and rightly. But the missing part is the quality of the student. So the student also has to be desirous of learning. This is true in every walk of life, and every skill that I want to acquire, and something as deep as requires a genuine interest throughout. It cannot be a short term affair.
But here there is a question that often arises in my mind, like about blind faith vis-a-vis faith with conviction, right? So when you're talking about seeking with the right mindset, sometimes when you are accepting something or not accepting something, when you're assimilating knowledge that is coming across to you, I think it's a fine line we need to draw between where we are just being I don't know what is the word, instead of just accepting blindly, trying to weigh it against our how effective it is, or just being skeptical for the sake of just being skeptical for the sake of it, or in the process losing out on what you could assimilate if you could listen with more of an open mind. At the same time, instead of listening, sometimes open mind might be leading to a lot of blind assimilation, which is not good. I hope I'm able to make sense what I'm trying to say. Sometimes seeking with skepticism, it can be very limiting, but at the same time, understanding with some ability to question is perhaps essential. Sometimes it's difficult to draw a line between the two. Not in this context, but just occurred to me.
Yes, it is true that we should not accept everything blindly. That's why the three staged process, when you are listening to something, we should listen with an open mind and not with prejudice. By listening, when I'm reading something or hearing a teacher or reading a commentary on a particular topic, we should be the most open, so we can acquire as much knowledge as possible with whatever I am grasping, and not color it with my previous understanding or previous knowledge or any kind of preconceived notion. Once you have done that, then comes the part of checking whether this is applicable to me, before even checking whether the truth is correct or not, whether it is applicable to me and whether I can use it in daily life. What are the specific case studies where I could apply this truth to check its validity in my life? Once I have checked that, then you expand it, whether it is use specific or it is in general applicable or not. Then you go beyond that and try to contemplate on the fact that you have heard or the idea that you want to revisit. You must revisit it in your contemplative meditation so that you can intuitively understand the topic a little more and join the dots that you have in your mind around that particular topic. That's why when we study philosophy, we don't have to read books after books. When we talk about philosophy and scriptural reading, a passage can be transformative because you have to chew the passage intellectually, experience it, and intuitively understand it. One passage in itself could transform your life if you could really go to the deepest corner and bring out all the facets of truth it has to offer. And hence, if we consume too much, it is good at an intellectual level, but we have the responsibility to chew it over and over again. Any other thoughts before I progress?
This thought of chewing really resonates. Thank you.
Now, let us come to what we are going to study and how the what is the problem that Vedanta is trying to solve. Now, Vedanta talks about suffering like Buddhism talks about suffering. Most of you have heard me talking about suffering from a Buddhist point of view. Buddhism talks about suffering in the sense of old age, sickness, death, financial, mental suffering, etc. So that's the apparent suffering we see in the world. If there is a tsunami or an earthquake, people suffering, you see yourself and your family and friends suffering. Inevitability of suffering in life, that is what Buddha talks about, and you can see the kind of suffering he talks about. And then he channelizes that suffering into compassion, that you need to be compassionate towards your others and to yourself. And through compassion, you can alleviate suffering. So that's one point of view towards suffering. Now, Vedanta also talks about suffering, but it does not talk about mental suffering, physical suffering, financial suffering, or suffering due to change or mood swings, nothing. It is not talking about that kind of suffering. What it is talking about is that we as human beings identify ourselves either as body or as sensations or as thoughts. We have these identifications which help us feel unique, and that is born out of ego. That is where our misplaced identification is. Because I identify myself with my ego and the uniqueness it provides me, I am limited. But my true nature is of limitless experience, omnipresence, and ever expanding bliss. So, because I am omniscient, omnipresent, and blissful, if I am forgetting that and identifying myself with temporary pleasure, pain, and the experiences that I have of this world, then this misidentification leads to a suffering of not knowing truly who you are. If you don't know who you are truly, everything else that you experience is unreal, and everything that you experience results into suffering. And this suffering of misidentification is what Vedanta is trying to address. So this is, if I take the topmost level view of the essence that Vedantic philosophy has to offer, it is that I want to address this misidentification not only at an intellectual level, but at an experiential level. To say that I am awareness or to say that I am pure consciousness is 11 of us say that I am pure consciousness or I am awareness, it will mean nothing because this is an intellectual uttering. It is not an experiential uttering. And if it was an experience for me that I am consciousness or I am pure awareness or I am pure, then I will no longer be a seeker. I am done with seeking because I know who am I. Even for once, if I know who am I, then that experience alone ends all suffering and answers all my queries because my identification has shifted from my temporary limited being to my real everlasting ever blissful being. So this transition from intellectually stating to experientially stating the fact that I am truly pure consciousness is the journey that I want to travel, and Vedanta helps me to travel that journey. This is what we are trying to actually achieve through reading, understanding, and trying to get involved with this exercise of understanding. Now, this kind of knowledge needs more understanding other than this statement. This is divided into 6 parts. First is preparing the mind, where I spent the last 3 days. That how do I prepare my mind to become a good seeker so that this burning desire for liberation can arise. And I am trying to improve myself as a seeker till I have achieved final liberation. So that's the first part. Second is that myself, what the experiencer of this world needs to be analyzed. I am the one who is experiencing the world. So, from my point of view, if I'm looking at the world, I need to first analyze myself. So, what am I made of? What are my this experience that I am having of this world? Me as the jeev or me as the experiencer needs to be analyzed. So, my analysis has to happen. So that's the second study that we want to go. Then the third part is I need to analyze what I'm experiencing, the jagat. So you understand yourself, you understand the outer world. So Jeev and Jagat, this is the intellectual understanding of these two things have to happen. Then we need to understand the concept of Brahman, which is what I am truly am. So the pure consciousness that I want to experience, I need to first intellectually place it in my hierarchy. So you have Jeev, Jagat, and Brahma. These are 3 aspects of my existence that I need to intellectually understand. First is preparing the mind for such an inquiry. Second is to understand myself and my anatomy. So, by me, all of us, anatomy of the experiencer of this world and everything around us, anatomy of the jiva, anatomy of the jagat that I am experiencing, and anatomy of the Brahman that I want to be, or what Vedanta says is real. Then we will come to the resolution of contradictions. If I am unreal and experiencing what is unreal, then why should I take effort? This is the contradiction of the study. So that contradiction needs to be studied in detail so that we have better clarity. And finally, the recognition of identity or the relation between the Jeev and Brahma, and the final study of the Mahavakya, where you say Aham Brahmasmi. So these are 6 different facets of Vedantic study.
So as of now, it is, but we will have to look at the recordings
Of
later, I
course,
guess.
why I am spending this much time on the 6 segments, it, primarily because when we study Vedantic philosophy, everything gets jumbled up. So this bifurcation you need to remember so that you can place the study, what we are studying, with correct perspective. Okay. So analysis of jiva or the anatomy of jiva can become very rudimentary or monotonous. The question can come, what is the relevance of studying the anatomy of a jiva? I will try to explain that, but understand that the three pillars around which the study is established, the Jeev, Jagat, and Brahma, all three needs to be understood a little more in detail. And that's what we are going to do now. Any other thought or question or comment, please share. Let us go back to the three main assertions that Vedanta has to offer before we get into the anatomy of the jiva. First assertion, suffering. It looks at suffering from the point of view of misidentification of my suffering arises because I do not understand who am I properly. That's my main problem. And from there on, all my suffering arises. Now, few core assertions of Vedantic philosophy is consciousness is fundamental. So the existence of pure consciousness is fundamental, or existence of pure Brahman is fundamental to our existence. So everything known is known in consciousness. Consciousness itself is never an object. Therefore, it cannot be negated. Consciousness is never an object. This is something we need to understand. Philosophy talks about the seer and the seen, what you are seeing and what is being seen. If these are two different things, then you have not attained final liberation. The moment you are unable to observe your own consciousness, that's the moment you have realized who you are. If I can observe my hand, for example, then I know I am not my hand. If I can observe my own thoughts, then I know I am not the thoughts. If anything is observable, that means you are not that. So this is fundamental. You cannot observe yourself. And consciousness, because it is the fundamental truth in Vedantic philosophy, it cannot be an object. So the moment you realize your consciousness, then the distinction between the observer and the observee vanishes. So you cannot observe yourself is the ultimate truth, or is one of the ultimate truths that Vedanta talks about. The sense of limitation that we have is a mistake. That's where our suffering arises. That I will die, or I have old age and I am limited in strength, I'm limited in my presence, I'm limited in my consciousness, I'm limited in my understanding. The mistake, and this is not a fact. A mistake can be rectified. The mistake can be rectified in the here and now. If I were to realize, or if somewhere to come and tell me who am I, then all my suffering can end without me going and working out all my karma, without the learnings that I need to have, which is by experience. All that can be removed in one touch of a pure guru, or if my desire to know myself is at its, I will know who am I. So the fact that I am not knowing who am I is because that burning desire is not there. So the limitation or this misidentification is a mistake, and it is not my reality. This can be changed very quickly, almost instantaneously, if I had the right kind of desire. So the sense of limitation that we experience could be changed very quickly. I do not have to wait lifetimes after lifetimes to transform myself. And finally, freedom. It is related to the thing that I'm talking about. Freedom is a recognition and not an achievement. By that, it means that I do not need to travel a distance to understand what am I. Freedom, or the self-realization that who am I, is simply the recognition of who I am truly. It is not that I'm acquiring a particular persona. I'm not becoming someone who am I not. That I am experiencing limitation isn't mistake. One. Two, that I will experience limitlessness will be a recognition and not a trait that I acquire. So I am enough. Why is this important? When we try to do something, or when I am seeking truth, there is a lot of doubt that comes into my mind. I can think whether I am good enough for that. A person who has so many dependencies on my senses, who can be manipulated so easily, who has such little strength and such little willpower, am I good enough to seek liberation? That is the question that comes into my mind whenever I go deep into any kind of analysis. This is true for every seeker. Every seeker goes through three kinds of doubts. One is the doubt on your capability or your goodness, that you are good enough morally, intellectually, in every possible way. Am I good enough to even desire liberation? So that needs to be removed. And that is what idea that I am good enough in the here and now. That's why it is a powerful message that I must recognize that I am good enough for liberation. I do not need to become the perfect being described in the scriptures or that society has listed out to seek liberation. I am good enough here and now. So that's one kind of doubt I need to overcome as a seeker. Second kind of doubt I need to overcome is this the path that I need to follow, or is there a better path for me? And closely related to this, is this the correct teacher for me, or I need a better teacher, or there is someone else waiting for me? So these are three kinds of doubt that goes a seeker's mind. The first one is the most powerful, where you doubt yourself, your ability, your habits, your willpower. Vedanta is saying that none of it matters because none of it is real. These are not your faults. You are pure being. You have forgotten that you are a pure being. You just need to know that you are a pure being. All that you need to do is just know. You do not need to become anything. If I don't need to become anything, then my continuous desire to perfect myself can take a back seat. I can focus more on understanding who am I. If I focus more on understanding who am I, then my self knowledge grows, and that self knowledge is a big weapon for me to do things in the real world. Because I doubt so much on my own abilities, I am continuously doubting whether it is liberation or in mundane matters. Self doubt is something that I need to overcome. And and we are all adult human beings who have led a good life, who have not hurt others. We are amongst people who have led a very respectable life overall. And then also we are filled with so much doubt. Whenever we want to do something mundane or spiritual, we are filled with doubts. That we are good enough with our experience, with our body, with our mind, that we are capable. That belief should be there. You are good enough. You have been good enough always. You just don't know that. And if this idea is true for liberation, I will extrapolate it and say that this idea is good for everything that I undertake. So there can be less self doubt, growth within of an understanding of who I am truly. And then I can exercise my strength. Because I keep doubting, I'm unable to exercise my strength. So this is what recognition, freedom as recognition, not an achievement. There is a distinction here. Questions and comments, please.
Sir, isn't it a little tricky to understand? How do you draw a line between feeling overconfident and being full of doubt?
Yes.
Sometimes people are so confident that they know everything, and that's also a good reason for downfall, even while we're acquiring skills in the regular world. So I
Yes.
think that this is a very difficult thing. Self assess and understand the boundary.
See, this is where I need to grow in understanding of self. Say I want to learn a skill in computers. The doubt comes whether I am good enough to understand reasoning. But that doubt should not be there with me. I should apply myself to learn how to reason. But that I will be overconfident and say that I know that skill is like foolishness, where you don't know yourself. Part of being confident is to know yourself, understanding yourself, and understanding your physical, mental capabilities will help you understand where you stand. It does not lead to overconfidence. Only people who do not inquire about their own mental, physical makeup are the people who are overconfident. And this is very closely related to humility. If you are humble enough, then you inquire and you are open to understanding. If you are not humble, then you do not ask questions to others, neither do you ask question to yourself, and your growth is stunted. So humility is required. Otherwise, you cannot grow. Intellectual analysis, inquiries of the world or of the other world, or you need to be humble enough to inquire. If you inquire, you will have answers. People who do not grow are
Yes.
people who are full of themselves, that they do not wish to even question their own self, or that's how you stop your growth. You can apply this in any walk of life.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Okay. Now, we need to understand the anatomy of self. We will cover anatomy of self in detail in our next session. And why we need to understand anatomy, that also is extremely important. So what is anatomy of self? It is divided into three bodies: your gross body, your subtle body, and your causal body. Some people call it physical, astral, causal. Some people call it gross, subtle, and causal. So it depends whatever nomenclature you are dealing with. There are three bodies that you are dealing with. First one, the body is the body that you see of your flesh and bone and sensory organs. The body that you can see in mass is what you call the body. Then you have the subtle body where your mind and intellect, that is your subtle body. And finally, you have your causal body where your ego resides. So this is the three layers in which the body is divided. How the interplay of these three bodies results misidentification, which results in suffering, is what we will try to understand as we go forward. So this is what we will be discussing in the coming class: the three bodies, the gross body, the subtle body, and the causal body. Gross body is very clear that we have flesh, bone, sensory, hardware, chemical reactions, everything that you can see or what science can actually dissect is your gross body. Then you have your shukshmasari, subtle body, where you have your and man. So these are four layers. This we need to understand deeply. So remember Yoga Sutra, Chitta Vritti Nirodh. We will come to Chitta and define Chitta properly. These are four layers in which my mind is divided. Chitta is where your awareness lies, Buddhi is where your intellect lies, Ahankar is where the identification of self lies, Man is where your emotions reside. This will be a very interesting discussion next day. Finally, you have your causal body where your true self, and that is where your ego is permanently seated. Any other questions before we end today?
I have a question.
হ্যাঁ ম্যাম বলুন।
Is there any relationship of self-realization with maturity?
Self realization with maturity, ma'am.
When you are getting mature,
Yes,
you can actually identify yourself.
this I have to answer in two layers. One is that when we say maturity, we generally talk about emotional maturity, that I do not overreact. I understand what am I responsible for. I understand how my actions will affect others. I understand what people are trying to do to me. This is what I call maturity. Am I correct, ma'am? This is what you are trying to
Yeah,
say.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
What is
if I
the difference between these two? Maturity and
and
self-realization.
self-realization. Yeah.
Yeah,
So this maturity can come purely from worldly experiences also.
right.
Can be aware of my self and my role in this world, and how my actions impact others and how others are impacting to me through worldly knowledge as well, purely experience. Realization requires me to understand who I am truly. Therein, my intuitive understanding is required. If I understand who am I truly, then I will be a mature person. But because I am a mature person, I may not be a self-realized being. There is a difference there, ma'am. Us are more mature than some rowdy teenager. Are we self-realized beings? We are not yet self-realized beings. But he was self-realized. Dalai Lama, he is self-realized. I don't know whether he's self-realized. I assume that he should be self-realized. Sages who are self-realized will be automatically mature. They don't need to find a reason to be mature. They know and they behave because of their knowledge. On the other hand, we are maturing, we are work in progress. We will be more mature than what we were 5 years ago, than our teenage self. We are gaining more knowledge about ourselves, but we are not yet self realized. That's the distinction, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, I will just take 2 more minutes from all of you. Please understand what we are trying to do. One, we are trying to study philosophy. That's the top layer. Second, philosophy approaches suffering slightly differently from how Buddhism or our general perception of suffering is. Here, Vedantic philosophy is trying to solve a problem that we are suffering. All philosophies try to end our suffering. So does Vedantic philosophy. The definition of suffering is because we have not realized who we are, we suffer. So we need to realize who we are. We not need to become something to know, to arrive. We are not trying to arrive. We just need to know. So that's the problem definition and the solution that Veda offers. Now, in that process, we need to understand what Veda is trying to offer. We need to prepare our mind for self-inquiry in the highest sense possible. Once that preparation is done, or we realize that we need to prepare, it's an ongoing process. We continuously do that. We need to understand the one who is inquiring, the anatomy of things he or she is experiencing, and the anatomy of his or her real self. So these three terms I need to understand properly, and the anatomy of these three things. So that detail we need to go. When we go to understand Jeev, Jagat, and Brahma, there will be some contradictions that come out. Why these contradictions come out is because I'm trying to understand Brahman, which is pure consciousness, intellectually. With my limited mind, I'm trying to explore something limitless, and hence there will be a gap in my understanding. An intellectual exercise, but a very important exercise to answer the contradictions. Finally, we will study the relationship between who am I and like my current self and the Brahma. So there I study the four Mahavakyas where I introduce Aham Brahmasmi. So this is the full bandwidth of what we are going to deal. This is the fourth session. It is like a middle session to explain what we are going to study. Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta is a very vast subject. We are just trying to touch the topmost layer of it. We will try to do it with as much honesty as possible. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone.